Have you ever bought a full week's shop on Monday and found yourself throwing half of it in the bin by Thursday, then wondered how women who earn 12 shillings a week manage to feed a family of 5 without wasting a single crumb? That knowledge was buried by the convenience food industry, and the replacement has never kept food as long. Modern food chemistry has since confirmed what she already knew, that ethylene gas, humidity, acidity, and air circulation govern how long fresh food survives, and that the women who managed those forces by hand without a single appliance understood them completely. Every method in this film costs under £1. Several cost nothing at all. Applied together, they can add 10 to 21 extra days to your weekly shop and take between 2 and 5 items permanently off your shopping list. To understand where this knowledge came from and why it was taken from you, you have to go back to the rationing kitchens of 1940s Britain, where wasting a single carrot was not carelessness. It was a moral failure. Number 20. In a Yorkshire kitchen in the winter of 1942, with a weekly ration of 2 ounces of butter, 2 ounces of lard, 8 ounces of sugar, and 1 shilling and 2pence worth of meat to last 7 days, a woman, whose name a Women's Institute record may yet confirm, stood at a stone larder shelf set into the north wall, where the temperature never rose above 13 degrees Celsius even in August, and wrapped each apple individually in a sheet of newspaper before placing it carefully in the rack. She did not know the word ethylene, she knew the result. The potato placed beside an unwrapped apple sprouted within a fortnight. Beside a wrapped one, it held firm for 6 additional weeks. The newspaper absorbed and contained the ripening gas the apple breathed out continuously, invisibly, at a rate that would devastate any sensitive vegetable placed within range. The method cost nothing beyond the paper she would have burned anyway. She didn't know the word ethylene, she knew the result. Number 19. Beside those wrapped apples stood a shallow wooden box packed with barely damp sand. Not wet, not dry, but holding just enough moisture to press together slightly when squeezed. And into that sand she pushed the season's carrots, parsnips, and beetroot, root tip first, upright, each separated from its neighbor by an inch of grit. The sand maintained the precise humidity that prevents cell walls from shriveling whilst drawing off the surplus moisture that invites rot. A Ministry of Food bulletin from the early 1940s described the principle clearly. Root vegetables stored this way lasted 3 full months without refrigeration, without plastic, without any purchase beyond the sand itself, until the sealed plastic bag arrived in the vegetable aisle of the new supermarkets and the sandbox was quietly forgotten, taking 3 months of storage with it. Number 18, Lancashire, 1943. A domestic science teacher in Bolton, her name unrecorded, though her method is not, taught her students that a cut loaf placed face down on a clean enamel plate sealed its own crumb against the drying air. The exposed starch of the cut surface, resting flat against the cool enamel, was protected from the movement of air that hardens bread within hours. No tin required, no wrapping, no purchase of any kind. The loaf remained genuinely soft for 4 to 5 days through a mechanism so simple it appears at first glance to be doing nothing at all. A Ministry of Food pamphlet from the same period described the principle in plain terms intended for women who understood practical results and needed no further argument. A loaf in 1943 had to last the week. It did. Number 17. When the loaf did harden, and eventually it would, she wrapped a damp cloth tightly around the entire crust, placed the loaf in a low oven at gas regulo 2, approximately 150 degrees Celsius, and left it for 8 minutes precisely. The moisture from the cloth migrated back into the dried crumb under heat, restoring the interior texture without burning the crust. The bread emerged not perfect, but perfectly edible, soft enough to slice, flavorful enough to eat, and emphatically not wasted. That technique extended the life of every loaf in every household that knew it by at least 2 additional days. Here is where the story deepens. By 1947, this knowledge was moving, not through published books, which were expensive and scarce, but through village halls and allotment society meetings and the quiet authority of health visitors carrying their black bags into terrace houses across the industrial Midlands, speaking woman to woman in kitchens where there was no room for waste and no patience for anything that did not work. Number 16, a Women's Institute county organiser travelling between Derbyshire villages in 1947, her name recorded in WY county records not yet fully catalogued, demonstrated how to store leafy greens precisely as you store cut flowers, stems trimmed cleanly, placed upright in a jar of cold water, covered loosely with a damp cloth to hold humidity without sealing the leaves from air entirely. Lettuce, watercress, parsley. Left this way on a cool windowsill, they remained fully crisp and usable for 4 to 6 days longer than the same leaves wilting in a drawer. The principle was straightforward. The stem continued to draw water, the leaf continued to live. The system worked so well it looked effortless, and that was its first danger. Number 15. Onions required the opposite condition entirely. They needed air, circulation, not humidity. And so older women across the north recalled hanging them in the legs of clean stockings, knotting the fabric firmly between each bulb to prevent any two from touching. Hung from a hook in a cool, dry outhouse or larder corner, onions stored this way lasted up to 3 months without softening or sprouting. The method required nothing except a pair of stockings past their wearable life and a single hook on a wall. Number 14. Tomatoes were stored stem side down at room temperature, never anywhere near cold. The stem scar, where the fruit had separated from the vine, was its most vulnerable point, the place where air entered and cell wall degradation began. Placed stem down on a plate, the weight of the fruit sealed that scar and slowed collapse by 5 to 7 days. A social survey of British households from the mid-1950s, held in the Mass Observation Archive, noted this practice as near universal among women over 40 and almost entirely unknown among women under 30. That gap, a single generation wide, was already opening. Then came the dairy, number 13. In an East Midlands farmhouse kitchen in the summer of 1944, butter was kept under an upturned clay pot whose exterior had been dampened thoroughly with cold water. As the water evaporated from the porous clay, it drew heat from the air trapped beneath, reducing the ambient temperature around the butter by 2 to 4 degrees Celsius without any electrical power. In a British summer kitchen, that reduction was the precise difference between butter that held through the week and butter that turned rancid by Wednesday. The pot cost 6pence. The principle was evaporative cooling, the same physics that cools the human body through perspiration, applied to a lump of fat under a piece of terracotta, clay and water. It worked every time, until the generation that understood why it worked was gone. Number 12. Hard cheese was wrapped not in cling film, which would not enter British domestic life until the early 1950s, but in a cloth lightly dampened with a mild salt water solution folded neatly around the cut face of the block. The salt discouraged mold without drawing moisture from the cheese itself. The cloth breathed, permitting the gentle air exchange that hard cheese requires to remain firm and flavorful. Stored in the coolest part of the larder, a well-wrapped hard cheese kept for up to 3 weeks. Wrapped in cling film, the same cheese sweats and molds within 4 days. The older method was not inferior, it was definitively superior. Then came the fruit knowledge, passed through harvest seasons and cellar traditions that stretched back further than anyone in the room could name. Number 11. In a Yorkshire stone cellar in the autumn of 1948, maintaining a steady 8 to 10 degrees Celsius through cold months purely by virtue of its depth and stone construction, a woman whose name a Leeds household record may yet confirm checked her stored pears every 48 hours without variation. One softening pear, left undiscovered for a single extra day, would release enough ethylene to begin the collapse of every pear it touched, and those would accelerate the ones beside them. and within a week an entire season's harvest would be brown liquid on a stone shelf. She removed the soft specimen the moment her fingers found it. The remaining batch extended by 10 to 14 days. The check cost 2 minutes every other morning. She never missed it. She checked the pears every 2 days, without fail. The ones who stopped checking lost everything. Number 10. Bananas were hung from a hook or a purpose-made stand so their skins remained in open circulating air and no two fruits rested touching. Hung this way, the ethylene each banana exhaled dispersed into the surrounding air rather than concentrating at points of contact and accelerating ripening. The fruit held for 3 to 5 days longer and ripened evenly rather than in the bruised patches that form wherever banana presses against a cold bowl. The practice was so ordinary as to be unremarkable. It is now almost entirely invisible. And here is where the story turns. By the early 1950s, this knowledge was so completely absorbed into daily domestic practice that it had ceased to be knowledge at all. It had become gesture, the automatic movement of experienced hands that needed no explanation because no explanation had ever been requested. Number 9. Fresh herbs, parsley from the back garden, mint from the pot by the door, whatever the allotment or the Saturday market stall could provide, were treated precisely as the leafy greens, stems trimmed, placed in a small glass of water on the kitchen windowsill, with a paper bag rested loosely over the leaves to hold humidity without sealing out the air. Left this way, fresh herbs lasted up to 2 full weeks. Left loose in a drawer, they lasted 2 to 3 days. A young wife on a new council estate in Coventry in 1954, a housing survey respondent whose name the Mass Observation Archive may contain, watched her mother-in-law perform every one of these actions silently on a Monday morning, as part of a rhythm so habitual it produced no comment from either woman. No explanation was offered, no explanation was thought necessary. When the mother-in-law died, the knowledge died with her because neither woman had understood it needed to be spoken aloud to survive. Because she never taught it aloud, no one knew it needed to be learned. Then the companies arrived. Number 8. At the Ideal Home Exhibition in London in 1955, a refrigerator manufacturer's stand drew queues across the exhibition floor. The marketing positioned cool storage as a universal solution, the refrigerator as a single object replacing all prior knowledge with one correct action, put the food inside and close the door. No guidance was offered regarding foods that cold temperatures actively damage. The tomato whose cell walls rupture below 10 degrees Celsius. The potato whose starches convert to sweetness in cold, dry air. The bread that stales faster inside a refrigerator than on an enamel plate at room temperature. Households placed everything inside the new machine. Everything wasted faster than before. The machine that promised to save food quietly taught a generation to ruin it. Number 7. Potatoes, in any household that retained the understanding, were stored in Hessian sacks or brown paper bags, never plastic, in total darkness. Even weak ambient kitchen light triggers solanine production in potato skin within days, producing the green coloration and bitter flavor that makes a potato unpleasant. Plastic traps moisture and causes rot from within. Darkness and breathable material, 2 conditions costing pennies, keep potatoes firm and usable for weeks. By 1963, fewer British urban households kept either a Hessian sack or a reliably dark storage corner. The knowledge of why these things mattered had not been replaced. It had simply been dropped. Number 6. Cling film entered British domestic life in the early 1950s. Tupperware arrived by approximately 1960. Both replaced the cloth, the plate, and the crockery cover, materials that breathed, with materials that sealed completely. A cut apple browned at very nearly the same rate in sealed cling film as unwrapped, because the problem was not air access alone, but enzymatic activity at the cut surface. The older method required a squeeze of lemon juice pressed directly onto the exposed flesh, citric acid binding to the enzymes responsible for browning and halting their activity. The fruit remained perfectly presentable for 8 to 12 hours without refrigeration, without plastic, and without any product purchased for the purpose beyond the lemon already sitting in the fruit bowl. The replacement was shiny. The replacement was worse. Number 5. Eggs. A raw egg stored pointed end down, blunt end uppermost, air sac correctly positioned, keeps the yolk centered and isolated within the white for significantly longer than an egg stored on its side. The shell itself, left unwashed from the point of laying, carries a natural protein coating that seals the thousands of microscopic pores against airborne bacteria and prevents moisture loss. British eggs kept for up to 3 weeks in a cool larder when stored this way. Washing the shell removes the bloom entirely and reduces keeping life by more than half. Older women in communities where smallholding remained common recalled their grandmothers storing eggs pointed end down as a matter of unreflective habit, knowing only that eggs stored that way kept and eggs stored otherwise did not. By the early 1960s, the practice had disappeared almost entirely from British urban households, 2 women's lifetimes. That was all it took. Number 4. Cut onion was never sealed in cling film, which concentrates volatile sulfur compounds until the entire refrigerator carries the flavor in everything stored alongside. It was wrapped in beeswax cloth or greaseproof paper, placed flat side down on a small plate, and stored in the coolest available spot. The breathable wrapping allowed the sulfur compounds to dissipate at a controlled rate. The flat side-down position minimized the exposed surface area in contact with air. A cut onion stored this way remained fully usable for 5 to 7 days. The method required paper and the knowledge that sealed wrapping and good wrapping are not the same thing. Number 3. Salad leaves and mushrooms were stored with a single dry paper towel placed inside the bag or container, pressed directly against the produce. The towel absorbed the excess moisture that leaves and mushroom caps release as they continue to respire after harvest. Moisture that, left to accumulate, forms a thin, liquid layer, collapsing cell walls within 24 hours and producing the dark, slick deterioration familiar from every modern refrigerator vegetable drawer. The paper towel costs a fraction of a penny and extends usable life by 3 to 5 days. Standard domestic practice in British households until the mid-1960s, when pre-washed, pre-packaged salad arrived in supermarket chiller cabinets and made the question of storage appear to have been solved until Thursday arrived and the bag was opened and the contents were already gone. Number 2. Ginger root keeps best not in the refrigerator, where it desiccates and molds within a week, but unwrapped in the freezer. The ice crystals that form within the fibrous root during freezing break down the cellular structure slightly, making frozen ginger yield its flavor far more readily to a fine grater than fresh ginger does. Stored this way, ginger keeps for up to 6 months with no loss of flavor or potency. The method requires a freezer drawer and the willingness to stop buying fresh ginger every week and throwing 3/4 of it away by Friday. And finally, number 1, the master system, the single organizing principle beneath every other method in this film. Before any food is put away, the produce is separated into 2 groups according to its relationship with ethylene, those that produce it heavily, apples, bananas, avocados, pears, stone fruit, and those damaged by exposure to it, leafy greens, berries, broccoli, carrots, cucumbers. Store a bowl of bananas beside a bag of salad leaves and the leaves collapse within a day. Store them apart and the leaves hold for a week. The bananas ripen evenly and nothing is lost before its time. This requires no equipment, no purchase, no product. It requires only the knowledge that food is alive, that it breathes, that what it breathes affects everything around it, and that the women who understood this, who learned it not from food science journals, but from the cold logic of a ration book and a stone shelf and a weekly budget that permitted no waste, had assembled a complete and working science of keeping that took decades to build and less than 2 generations to lose. The larder shelf stands empty now, The stone is cold and clean, where the wrapped apple sat, and the sandbox held its ranked row of carrots, and the dampened cloth lay folded over the buttercrock. There is nothing. Only the silence of a space that once held a complete practical intelligence, and now holds only the faint shadows of objects that are gone. Somewhere nearby, a kitchen drawer opens. The knowledge is still there to be recovered. It was never destroyed, it was only set down.